This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Kuf Tes Vav B'Siyata Dishmaya. The final few daf of this incredible Masechta. And again, if anyone would like to partner from Masechtas Bamitzia, we're happy to give the whole thing away in one big partnership or not. Either way, the most important thing is this chos, to be able to learn together. And as well, just a reminder, as in previous years, the summer dafim, which are actually Gemara Baba Basra, have already begun to be recorded. If anyone has any yard sites or reasons they'd like to sponsor, have a name mentioned in the summer dafim, please reach out. But for now, we pick it up in the bottom of Kuf Yud Dalid Amid Beis at the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Hamad Kir Kilav Usvarav Biyad Acher. Oh, and there went the daf. Let's try that. Oh, excuse me. One more time. There we go. Let's get that highlighter back up. Here we go. So it recognizes Hamakir, his Kilav or his Svarav Biyad Acher. He realizes, what's my watch doing on your hand? What's my sefer doing on your stander? V'yatzalai shem geneva. And guess what? People have been talking that this guy is a gan of beer. Yishav aloi. What he does is he must swear to him. Yishav aloi kama nasan. V'yitol. And then he takes that amount from... Again, over here, lokeach, a little bit difficult, doesn't really mean a lokeach. Lokeach over here means the one who's claiming that he bought the item. So he has to swear how much he paid, and then that's the amount that he can collect. Vim lav kol, and if not, if there's no one talking that he's a ganif, lav kol emeno, then he's not believed to say that the item was stolen. Shani oimer machron lacher v'lokech ze emenu. Ruvain, maybe you sold it to someone else and he bought it from him. So again, Ruvain finds that his item is in the hands of Shimon. And Ruvain wonders, what in the world does Shimon have my item for? And there's reports that Shimon is a ganav. So that Shimon, who claims that he bought the item, I didn't steal it. So Shimon has to return the item, and then he could swear how much he claims that he bought the item for, and that's the amount that Shimon will be able to take back from Ruvain, who is making the original claim, because of course Ruvain wants his item back. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Who cares if there's a Shem Geneva in the ear? Maybe Ruvain, maybe the original owner sold it. And he is the one that's making the Shema, the shame. Meaning, Ruvain, maybe Ruvain sold the item. Now Ruvain knows, oh, listen, I have a great plan over here. Let me make up a story that this Shimon is a ganaf, and then I'll be able to get to him. So why? Because there's a call, does that make it that Ruvain automatically wins in this story? The case is that people came to his house, and he got up in the middle of the night and he screamed, Nignevu Kilai, my items have been stolen. Meaning, this didn't happen in a vacuum, but rather the guy got up screaming in the middle of the night that someone stole my item. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Certainly, we should suspect it's such a story that he's just trying to fabricate some sort of case to get back some of his cash. Says the Gemara, Rav Kahana concluded in the name of Ran, not only did he get up screaming in the middle of the night, but guess what? There was evidence that something was going on. There was a tunnel dug into his house. And the people that were staying in his house for that night, Shal Kalim al Kasveim, and they all left with bundles of Kalim on their shoulders. They went through the tunnel, maybe because they know their way of leaving without being seen. Everyone's saying, you saw what happened, that crazy story. People are just parading out with all his items. Says the Gemara, still circumstantial evidence. How do we know? Maybe they were only utensils and there were no books. How do we know what they were holding? We said that they walked out with bundles on their shoulders. So maybe they stole his kalim, but who said they stole his books? The case is that people were saying that there were books also stolen. I mean, this is all part of the kol. Still, the Gemara is not happy. Maybe they were carrying small books and he wants back big books. Again, this is all circumstantial. We see the incredible legs that the Gemara is going to ascertain that indeed this was what was stolen. The case is where everyone was talking about such and such sefer that went missing. There's different types that in that sefer. Maybe it was an old one and it was a new one. Still, how do we know? Amarav kikon da amri halalu king of shalplani halalu sfar of shalplani. The shmua was that people were talking that these specific items were of the other guy, and that is the reason why he has an amonist in such a case. Says the Gemara, Miyamarav hachi. 3 lines to the bottom. The son comes in a tunnel and takes his items and leaves potter. My timer. What's the reason why he's potter? But because he acquired them bidimi with his blood. Since if someone steals in such a mannerism, he could have been killed. Therefore, he is potter from the monetary payment. This is the classical rule of Kimle B'Diramine. If someone is Bava Machteris, if someone tunnels into your house, you're not to kill them. So if this guy put himself in such a situation, then you're not able to claim back the money from him. But explains the Gemara, that's only where it was a whole time he could have gotten killed. But in this case, since what was the case? People were in his house overnight, and then they left through the tunnel. What's that they stole into his house through the tunnel? That's the reason why it's not your classical case of Bava Machteres. And therefore says the Gemara, in such a scenario, he would not be Chayav Misa, you would not be able to kill him, therefore there will be monetary compensation. Amar Rava, says Rava, Loishanu, the din is only Alabalabai, is also Limkar Kelov. Says Rava, this din only really makes sense in a scenario in which this balabayis is normal. He sells his items. But if a balabayis, if we're referring to, doesn't normally sell his items, we would not have to go into such detail. It would enough to say that they're holding utensils and books. Only in this case, because he sells his items and everyone knows the items that he has, that's why they have to say with precision what precisely were the items that they know to have been stolen. Ask the Gemara, and how do we know? Maybe he sold these items because he needed the cash. As we said in the Mishnah, there was a Shem Geneva about this guy in the city. Says the Gemara, Itmar, a new case, 3 lines down, Kuftas Vav Amar Aleph. Gonav umachar. Someone stole an item and then he sold it. And afterwards, the ganaf is found. The Rishain is the one that has to pay back to the owner. Even the second one, even the buyer has to pay back to the owner. There's no machlokes. Kan lifnei yush. Rav Yochanan, when he said, Rav Yochanan is referring to a case in which the items were sold before Yush. Imasheni. Hadin imasheni, excuse me. Since it was sold before Yush, therefore the halacha is, the din is with the sheni. Because Yush only happened after it was already in the possession of the buyer. And therefore, the buyer would not get anything back. Kan lachar yush. But Rav is referring to a case where there was yush, and then the items were sold, and therefore there was a shinoi rishos and a yush, and therefore adinim arishain. Only the first one has to pay, and not the buyer. Why? Because he has full ownership of the item, as he got it only after there was yush, and therefore adinim arishain. Tervayu islu de Rav Chisda, but they all both hold of Rav Chisda. This is taking us back to Kufiyat Aleph Amid Beis, that Yush will allow the Ganav to have the Kinyan with Shini Rishos. Therefore, if the item is subsequently sold, the person who bought it has full ownership of the item. So says the Gemara, we just explained that if it's sold before Yush, we're going with Rav Yochanan, that the original owner could go even to the buyer. You bought an item, you bought stolen goods, I'm sorry, so you're obligated to pay me back. Says the Gemara, Amrei Abaya, really? But is there not a machlokes when an item is sold before Yush? All cases of manas kuna are considered as if there was not Yush, and it's a machlokes, it's not. Amar loi. If someone said to a sheichet, Amar le'macherli, sell to me, me'eho shel par, not the sheichet, excuse me, but the butcher, the insides of the cow, v'hayu bahen manas, matanais, and within the innards there were matanas kehuna, noisnan lekoyin ve'enai, minakeloi min hadamin. The buyer has to give it to the koyin, and the butcher does not have to decrease the price of that which the buyer has to pay. But if the item was purchased by weight, so now if something's purchased by weight, then clearly he's paying for every part of the item, and he's paying for something which he's not going to be his. He's paying for something that belongs to the kayin. Then what's the halacha in the first white line? Ve'amar Rav, and Rav explained, Lo shana l'shashakol la'atzmai. The case is only where you waited for himself. Al v'shakol l'tabach adin ema tabach. He gets to the tabach. So says the Gemara, we see that it's not so clear that if, like we said from Rav Yochanan, we just said a moment ago from Rav Yochanan, that you could, yes, go to the loikeach, but here we see now you can only go to the tabach. Answers the Gemara, Ema afadinim tabach, to both of them. Ma'odatema, I would have thought Ema nasakuna nigzalas, you can't steal manaskuna kamashlan, they could still be stolen. That is, again, how Rabbah is explaining. Comes Abaya and says Abaya, Abaya Damar. According to Abaya, whom he says to pligi, b'mai pligi. What is the machlekes? But Rav Chisda, like we explained, it could be different machlekes. Whether Yush will affect a kinyan in the possession of the gazlan. Rav Zvid Amar, a third way of explaining the machlekes, Rav and Rav Yochanan. Zvid Amar, there was Yush after it became bought by the person. What's the machlekes? Mar Sava Yush v'achar yachshin rishos koi kani. That Rav Yochanan holds that if we have Yush and then kini rishos, there will still be a kinyan. Shini rishos, but v'achar Yush loy kani, because you already got it before Yush. Omar Savar and Rav holds no loy shina. There is no difference. So three different ways of explaining the machlekes Rav and Rav Yochanan. And the Gemara continues with a fourth way of explaining it. Rav Yochanan, Papa Amar, 6 lines into the white lines. Biglima. If we're talking about a stolen article, a shirt, the Kli Amalei please on machlekes, the Hadir Lamari. Everyone agrees you got to return. What are we discussing? We're discussing the din derabanan of the takanas hashak, that after the person who bought the item returned the stolen items, did the Rabbanan allow him to get compensated for the money he lost, or does he have to go to the Ganof and collect back from him? Again, the purchaser returned the item. Does he have to go back and find and get the money from the Ganof, or does the owner compensate? Says the Gemara, Rav Mishmei de Rav Chia Amar Adinim Arishain. Dino lekech delishkol zuzi miganof. The din is with the Rishon. What does it mean, the difference with the Rishon? That means the buyer has to go to the Rishon, to the Ganav, and not to the owner. Why? Because the halacha is that the Lokeach gets money only from the Ganav. And they didn't make a taikana to save him in this case. The din goes with the Sheni. You just go back to the Balabayis. Also, what takanas hashok. Says the Gemara, really? Rav loves what takanas hashok. Ravuna talmideo de Ravu. V'chanan bisha ganov glima. He stole a cloak with Zavnan. He sold it. Also, came to Ravuna. What did he say? Amar lelahu gavrazel sharia vitcha. What did he say to him? He said, Zil sharia vitcha. Go and redeem your pledge. Meaning, go pay back the buyer compensation. So what do we see? Rav clearly holds that there is this gezerah d'Rabbanan of taikonas hashok, even after we know the ganav is. Says there's no one to collect from him because he had no cash. It's as if we don't know about him, and therefore this case would be the exception to the rule. Amar Rava im Ganov. Someone steals Mafursamu. If it's a Mafursam, if it's a known Ganov, this takana does not apply. He says the Gemara, what do you mean? Says the Gemara, Shkayach. Everyone knew that Chana Bisha is a terrible guy, but not everyone knew that Chana Bisha was a Ganav. So the Gemara continues in explaining this Takanas Hashok limitations and how far it goes. So Itmar says the Gemara, if someone steals an item and with the stolen item he paid back someone that he owed, if someone stole an item and he paid back something that he had a credit somewhere, in those cases, the takanas hashok does not apply. Why not? The reason is because you didn't give him anything with the das of getting back the item. Meaning, the takanas hashok is only going to be in a case in which you wanted to buy this specific item. But if not, then the takanas hashok will not apply. But now what happens, says Gemara, mashkanta shavim masan b'meya. If there's a mashkin, and now this mashkin is worth 200, and he puts it up for a halva of 100, also what takanas hashok, there is a takanas hashok. But shava b'shava, what if it's worth the same value? So amei amar loyes what takanas hashok. Where's mazaj amar also about takanas hashok? And again, the discussion over here centers around how far does this din d'Rabbanan of takanas hashok extend to. Concludes this part of the Gemara with a story. Zvina shave b'shave. Stolen items are put up for sale, and they paid him fair value. Shave b'shave. Asa by takanas hashok. They make this takanas hashok in this case. Whereas shavamana b'masayim. Then Rav Shisa Amar Lo Yisrael Takanas Hashok, Rav Amaso Takanas Hashok, Ve'elchasa Be'kulu Yisrael Takanas Hashok Lavar, except for Miganov, except for the case of Ganav Bar Chayve Ganav Bar Be'kefo, as we explained, because in those cases he didn't pay it specifically for this item. Continues the Gemara with a story. We're about 15 lines from the bottom, 2 dots. Avimi Bar Nazoi. Definitely up for best name of the Masechta. Avimi bar Nazai, who moaz chamud Ravina. Have Masebu Gavar Arba Zuzi. He was owed 4 zuz by a certain person. Gonav Glima Asaniale. And the one that owed the money stole a shirt and brought it to Avimi. Ozfei Arba Zuzi Achrini. Avimi gave him another 4 zuz Achrini. Soifo, great Ganav, he's the Ganav, also come with Ravina Amar. And he said, Ravina Amar, Kama Ganavu Para Bechayvai. If someone, the first 4 zuz that you stole, if you paid your debt with it, in such a scenario, there's nothing else you could have done. Then these other 4 zuz will have the din of Takanas Hashok. So take your money and give the shirt back to the original owner. But says more really, Masla Rav Koyin v'doma Gelima Bahani Zuzi Kamoi Yaviniale. Maybe he gave him for the first monies, not the second one. So therefore, it should be a case of one who stole and paid back something on credit. And in that case, we said there's no takanas hashak. V'arba Zuzi Basra. In the latter four zuz is a manu. The latter four says, maybe he trusted him like he trusted him originally. So maybe in this case there should not be a takana. Says the Gemara, no. That indeed this Rav Kayin was correct, that there would be no takanas hashak in this case. One more story. Narsha Ganav Sifra. Narsha, that's a Narshin, I should say, which is someone who lives in Narsha, stole a sefer. Zamne lepupanai betamnin zuzi. And what did he? Sold it to a pupanayin, so lives in Papa, for 8 zuz. Also papanai zamne lebar mechuza. This book is traveling the world, and it sold it to one in mechuza b'mei of esrin zuz, while the value just jumped 120. And guess what? There's one big stolen goods. Omar Abaye says, Abaye 6 lines to the bottom. Lezel Mari de Safra, let the owner of the book go. V'yavle the bar mechayza, give it back to the bar mechayza. Tamni zuzi 80. V'shakal Sifra, and take the book back. V'azal bar mechayza v'shakal arbayin, and then take the last 40. Mi pap and noi. Says the bar, what's going on? Maskala Rava. Hashta lekech mi ganov. I'm supposed to go to Sashak. Lekech mi, boy. I don't understand. If you buy something from a ganov, you have to take on some shuk. So just because you bought it here from someone else, you are not. Ella amai Rava lizel mari desifra. Says Rava, you're right. The owner of the book should go. And he should give to the one from Mechuza how much? The full Meir Besin Zuzi 120. V'shakal Sifra, and take back the book. And then V'lezel Mari de Sifra V'lishkal Arban Meip Evanoi V'tamnim and Arshai. And then he'll be able to go back and get 40 from the first guy from Papa, 80 for the second guy from Nar Shah. We continue with the Mishnah at the end of Amid Aleph. So till now we've been discussing cases of Geneva. Now we segue a little bit into cases of one who tried to save something of his friend, and by saving something else, he himself lost something. We mentioned this case yesterday. There's a barrel of wine, a barrel of honey, and what happened? The barrel of honey breaks. So his friend says, hey, we're going to lose all the honey. So he spills out his wine, and he saves the honey. What's the halach as we turn over to Amid Beis? The only thing he could ask back from his friend is his schar. He could ask back for the cost of the labor that it entailed to save his friend's honey, and for the fact that he gave him his chavis, his barrel. However, he does not get back the wine that he lost when he spilled it out to save his honey. But if he says it's l'shel chavata noisen loy demei, but if he said to the guy, the honey owner, and he said, listen, I'll save your honey, but you got to give me back what's mine. You got to reimburse me for my wine. Then chayiv litain loy. Then he does have to give it to him. Case A. Case B in the Mishnah. Shotaf and Nachal. A river swept away Chamayir, one's donkey, v'chamar chaver, and the chamar of his friend. Shalay yava mana. His was worth 100, his donkey. V'chaver was worth masayim. V'niach zed shalay, and he left his own donkey. V'tzlas chaver, he saved his friend's donkey. Ein li alaschar, he just kicked out the wages. But again, v'mamar loy ani yitzla shalchav atanoisla shalay. I'll save yours, but you have to pay me back for mine. Then chayiv litain loy. So basically, both cases in the Mishnah proving the same point, that if you just go and you help your friend out, the halacha is you do not get compensated for the item that you lost. But if you explicitly said that you're going to pay me back, then you do get the item that you lost. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. The honey is spilling out. So let him say, I was zoicha to your honey from Hefker, and therefore it's really all mine. You want it back? No problem. Pay me back for my wine. Why are we saying in the Mishnah that he doesn't even get paid back for his wine? Milay Tana, do not learn in the Brayz Arisha Yatan Kadi Yaim V'Kadi Shemin Rosh Shemin Shem Mishtabris. You see they're breaking Loyamer. He said Truma Meiser Al Beir Sheyesh Li B'Teich Beisi. But V'Mamar, and if he says it Loyamer Klum. If he says it, it doesn't work. What's the reason? Because at this point they're hefker. If the barrel is broken and things are going to be lost, we assume it to be hefker. So over here, if the barrel of wine, if the barrel of honey is broken and all the honey is going to be lost, it's assumed to be hefker. If it's assumed to be hefker, the guy who spilled out his wine to save the honey should be able to at least get back the value of his wine. Explains the Gemara Kedamar Rav Yirmiyah Kisha Okal. Beis Habad Karoch Aleho. The case is the netting of the olive press was wrapped around the barrel. So too over here, Karoch Aleho, meaning it's going to prevent the honey from being lost, and therefore it's not hefker. Says the Gemara, 1 second, but the Mishnah continued and said, but if he said, but and if he did, then lo yamar klom. What do you mean? How does that work? Meaning, in the case of the truma and the meiser, where the barrel breaking, the truma and the meiser is running out, we said that if he said something, it's meaningless. Says the Gemara, why? Someone is traveling on the road and his money in his hand, and there's a robber coming. He should not say that the payers in my house are mukhulal or transferred onto these coins. But v'mamar, then devarav kai yamim. Even though the robber is about to take his items, still we say you're able to transfer the kedusha. So why in our case, where the barrel's breaking and it's going to be lost, can you not transfer the kedusha? Answers the Gemara, he's able to save her from the robber, and therefore you could transfer the kedusha onto something else. Says the Gemara, then so why isn't he allowed to do lechatchila? Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, really is any case in which there is afsida lechatchila, you're not allowed to be mechalel the item onto something else. So it has 10 barrels of tevel tamei. He sees one of them that broke. Or he sees one of them is uncovered, and therefore it's ulcer. Omer, he says, he says this is transferred onto 9 other barrels. But what do we see clearly? We see that in such a case that you're not allowed to do it. The exact same teretz we said by us. Says the Gemara, and with this we're going to conclude a little bit early over here. In the case where the barrel broke, I understand that what? Chazya. I understand that if it has a net, it could save the wine from being completely lost. But if the barrel is uncovered, the halacha is you're not allowed to drink it. It's giloy. So what is the difference that we have a net on top of it? What's the reason? How is it going to be saved? Says the Gemara. Maybe say if you use the wine to give off a good smell in your house. We learned in a Braisa, uncover liquids you should not spill into Rishos Rabim. Don't use it to knead dough. Meaning you should not even use them for auxiliary benefits. It's not only also to drink giloy, even for other items. So ask the Gemara, in our case, if this liquid is giloy, what could it potentially be used for? Answers the Gemara, to avad lay b'misanenet. An interesting halacha about giloy is that you can pour the wine through a strainer and thereby make sure that there's no snake venom in it, and therefore it would be allowed. The Brisa says, if you have a misanenet, you strain the wine, it still has a din of giloy. Says Rav Nechemia, when is this? Only bizan shetachtoina megula, bizan shetachtoina mechosa, av mishal yaina megula ein misham giloy. Why? Lefisha eresh al nachash daimeles fog. Fascinating science over here. The venom of the snake is like a sponge and therefore it's going to float in its place. Therefore, if you're able to sift it out, it would be mutter, and that's going to be the way that you're going to be able to use this wine. We'll stop over here. We'll pick up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.